Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Myth. So today we're doing a series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and I got a fun treat for you guys this evening because as of yesterday, Infidelity released his MSU1 Super Nintendo port of the original Contra using the Japanese version of the game, which has slightly better graphics. Not only does this bring an NES game that everyone knows, loves, and remembers to the Super Nintendo, it brings it in with MSU1 support and an entire menu giving you multiple options for multiple different soundtracks. And this is just absolutely spectacular. Infidelity is fresh off his Mega Man MSU1 port that we talked about a few months ago on the channel, and getting Contra coming over to the Super Nintendo working perfectly on real hardware or MiSTer FPGA is just an absolute treat. And you will see here you get multiple options on what you want for the soundtrack, and you can even have the original soundtrack from the NES game, and you get the Konami intro in full motion video, which is a nice small touch. And that's the great thing about all Infidelity's ports. They add things, make the game that much better, give you quality of life improvements, additional control options, and just a better overall experience. If you are a fan of Contra, this new Super Nintendo MSU1 port is going to end up being the definitive way to play the game, in my opinion. Now, of course, he really hasn't changed anything on the coding side of things, so it's still going to be an incredibly hard experience. You're going to want to use the Konami code for those 30 lives, and you're going to still die and see the continue screen many different times. But this is just so much fun to have something like this, especially based on the Famicom version of the game, which had additional hardware support for different and better graphics. It's not going to be night and day, and leave me a comment down below and tell me if you can spot the differences, but it is the premium way to play this game on the NES, and now with this on the Super Nintendo with an MSU1 support package alongside of it, it is just absolutely incredible. Just don't be like me and jump into the pits. I do that basically every time I play Contra. And this game is just so synonymous with the Nintendo Entertainment System. Pretty much everyone back in the day had a copy of Contra. It was one of the system's most popular games, and honestly, the NES version versus the arcade version, I'll take the NES any day of the week, even if it is painfully hard. And you'll see here, if you bring the wrong weapon into this area, it's going to give you a very hard time to progress. But that's the fun part about Contra. It is challenging enough to give you that ability to try to get better at the game, but hard enough to really make you want to come back and continue playing. And now on Super Nintendo, it's just more of a better thing. And trust me, I will definitely give you soundtrack samples here in just a moment. But this game was so revolutionary back on the NES. Seeing this perspective here, this pseudo 3D, was just so impressive when I first saw it. It felt like having 3D in the home, even if it is just sprites with a certain forced perspective behind them. But when you first saw this running in your home, your mind was absolutely blown when you were a kid, and if it wasn't, you must have seen something way more impressive than this. And tell me down below when the first time you played Contra is. I have no idea where my NES cart came from. Must have been a birthday gift or Christmas gift, because I don't remember getting it. I just remember having it for the system, and I feel like a lot of people are going to have that same story, because pretty much if you owned an NES, you were issued a copy of this game along with some Mario titles when you first got your system. But again, getting this over to MSU1 and Super Nintendo is so good, and I love the new control options as well. When you download this, there will be a README file in the folder, and that'll explain all of the new control options to you as well. I would say that even more so than the MSU1 soundtrack is a great quality of life improvement that just makes this game ever so slightly easier to control on a modern sort of standard. But of course, again, it is still Contra. It is going to be mind-numbingly hard. And I can't even remember the last time I beat this game. It was probably 15 years or so ago. I sat down and decided I was going to see the credits scroll one more time. It probably took me like 4 hours or so, but I did see the ending. And don't forget, the Konami code is going to be your friend, because this game is cruel on the amount of lives it gives you on a stock setting. But like I said, the big other takeaway of this port is the outstanding MSU1 soundtrack, and the reality is there is more than one. I'm just going to give you a sample of one of the versions of it. It sounds incredible. It's like Contra that you've never heard, but it works so perfectly alongside the visuals of the game. So go ahead and check it out for like 45 seconds or so, and I'll come back and talk more about the port. I mean, what do I really have to say about that soundtrack? It is absolutely spectacular. It sounds incredible with the MSU1 support, and on MiSTer FPGA, it is just working perfectly, and it drives the action of this game forward that much better. Given my choice between the original soundtrack and the new MSU1 versions on this port, I would pick the MSU1 version every day of the week and twice on Sundays, but that is just me. Tell me down below how you feel about it, because I know sometimes they can be a tonal mismatch. You're expecting that 8-bit chiptune that you remember from the game, and sometimes when people hear the MSU1 soundtrack, it kind of trips them up because they don't remember the game having that audio, obviously because it did not, but I love these things. It's a new fun way to play the game, and Infidelity has been absolutely killing it with all of these ports, and I can't wait to see what he comes up with next. And honestly, just because you have new music doesn't mean that's the only takeaway here. Some people, when I do videos on these ports, ask me what is the point getting a Nintendo game running on a Super Nintendo. It's not just for enhancements, it also allows the port makers to better understand the mappers and different chips that could be on NES or Famicom carts and bring them over to Super Nintendo, which will be foundational for future work as well. I get it from a gameplay perspective. You could just load this game up on the NES core or on your original NES hardware and have the exact same experience minus the new shoulder button controls, and that is 100% true. But getting this working on Super Nintendo is foundational for future work, and then getting the MSU1 support on top of that is even better. And of course, like I said, this is the Japanese version, but don't worry too much about the story, honestly. There's not a lot of story in Contra. You can kind of just play the game. And as we move back into the next base again, I just love how this game holds up. I would say this is one of the best looking Nintendo games in my opinion, and I think stylistically, art-wise, and the colorways they chose have continued to hold up over time. These greens, these reds, these steel in the pipes, all of this pseudo-scaling just goes together to make an image and a picture that looks like it's punching above what the Nintendo could do back in the day. And honestly, on the Famicom side of things, you do get a lot of enhancement chips in certain cartridges that never made their way over to North America, so definitely look up some games that are enhanced. Castlevania is one of them, the third game in the series that has special sound chips. There were a lot of things going on that we never got, and now you can play that version on this as well, because you can do the original soundtrack with the improved controls, so you can kind of do a little bit of mix and match and decide what works best for you. But again, do not skip the MSU1 soundtrack. It is some of the best music I've ever heard set to a game that wasn't originally set to it. So one more sound sample, bask in the glory that is this new Contra soundtrack, and I'll be right back. Honestly, I'm just absolutely in love with the MSU1 soundtrack here. It just marries perfectly together with the action on the screen, and I love the mix of 8-bit graphics with modern CD quality audio. But you tell me down below again what you think about this thing. And as I played this for the capture, I was just transported again back to being a kid in my bedroom, popping my TV over to channel 4 using the RF adapter and playing Contra. And I don't even remember if I actually beat the whole game back in the day when it was new. I probably sucked at it because honestly I still struggle with it to this day. It was that classic NES hard that people loved, but again, it will definitely steal all of your lives and kick you in the crotch and leave you in the alley for dead. But that's the fun part about Contra. It's so challenging, it's so memorable, and now with a new version with MSU1 support and new controls, it's just a better version of an absolutely Hall of Fame first ballot level good game. And that's just the great thing about all of these ports. It's a love letter to these games we all know, love, and remember, and having them is a good thing, because again, every once in a while in these videos I get comments where people are like, what is the point of this? The point of anything is just to have fun, and if we can have a new version of Contra with improved controls, with MSU1 soundtrack support, working on the Super Nintendo, why not? That's always my answer to these sort of things. If it can be done and someone wants to spend the time to do it, we should be happy, we should celebrate it, we should talk about the makers that are doing great things in retro gaming, and we should give them a spotlight. And I know a lot of you enjoy these news, sort of retro news videos, and I'm definitely going to be continuing them. But if you want to grab this game, just go over to Infidelity's Twitter. I'll have a link directly right there. Download it, throw it on your MiSTer, throw it on your Super Nintendo with the right flash cart, use it in software emulation, but the only thing you shouldn't do is not play this version of Contra, because to me this is now the definitive way to play the game moving forward. Sure that if you need any help or have any questions, leave me a comment down below. Otherwise, I am done. I'm going to die right here and run out of my last life, and I'm going to stop playing the game. Bye-bye.